Hello and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Founder, the podcast that tells the real stories of the people who make recruitment agency growth possible. I go straight to the source to discover the impact of great strategic partnerships between founders and their leadership teams and uncover why bringing in the right leadership team is crucial for the founder to build the business they want. We discuss what it takes to build a fulfilling career in agency without necessarily being a founder yourself and share the successes of the key people that, alongside the founder, make the agency work. It's unfiltered, honest and unscripted and gives a real insight into the people that make the agency work beyond the founder. On today's episode, I'm delighted to welcome Emma Bauer from Heriot Brown. Heriot Brown are a specialist in-house legal recruitment agency. Their founder, Scott Brown, was a former lawyer, started on his own about 8 years ago, I think it is now, and he's grown a really formidable team. And what I love about Scott is he had the foresight to really quickly understand his strengths and weaknesses and bring in key hires around that. One of those was Emma. She's the head of community. This girl is a bundle of energy, but not only that, she's so switched on and sharp and exceptionally good at what she does. And her story is all one of taking a risk, of patience, of doing things the right way at the right time, sticking by your guns and continuously adding value. Head of community is not a common role, or wasn't a common role when Emma went into Heriot Brown in 2021. There's more of it coming up now, but this episode is full of value of how to make the marketing community strategy work for your agency. And I think people are going to absolutely love this. So let's get straight into it. So Emma, thank you so much for joining me on Beyond the Founder. Really excited to have you on. Thank you so much. Obviously, I know who you are, but for everyone out there listening, can you just give us a high level on you, who you are, where you work, and what you do?
Of course. Thank you for having me, Paul. So I'm the head of community at a specialist in-house legal recruitment company called Heriot Brown, founded by a recovering lawyer 8 years ago. Head of community means a variety of things. So I run our events, I run our community chat channels, webinars, marketing, BD, PR, all sorts really, but just bringing the general counsel community and their teams together really in any way possible.
I love that. So it's a cross between sales, marketing, PR, the whole lot. I've not heard that title before until I met you, but it's brilliant. And we'll come on to that later and we'll talk all around that and how it works. But what I found really interesting, I remember we first met we were on a conference call and you were on it, and your ideas and your vision and your creativity and the way you were saying was so switched on and intelligent in terms of your EQ of the people in the room. I just thought, you know what, this girl knows her stuff. It's really impressive. Then I found out you hadn't come from a recruitment background.
No.
And I was like, right, so what's the story there? So do you mind just telling us a bit of background to you and how you ended up, and we'll just chart how you ended up getting into Heriot Brown, and we'll talk about that after.
Yeah, of course. So I suppose my story starts like many recruiters, actually. I finished up university and went, crap, what do I do now? So swung the CV out there and got a sales job, and it happened to be for a conference company. And my first event was something called the Global IP Exchange.
When was this, Emma?
This was in September 2010.
Okay, perfect.
So, the first event was the Corporate Counsel Exchange, and literally day one of this conference company, walk in, they go, here's an Excel spreadsheet, here's how you log on to LinkedIn, go and find 40 general counsel a day, cold call them, and then get them to buy a ticket to this event.
You're a grad, no experience, and you've gone straight into this.
Yeah. Not many women on the sales floor either, so quite an interesting environment, but I just sort of took it and thought, I'll continue looking. And 5 years later, I was still there. And then there's a massive magazine in the legal world called The Lawyer, the finest in the UK, I would say, but I am slightly biased. And they wanted to expand their events and sort of have a more targeted, bespoke attendee acquisition strategy rather than using the parent company's sort of internal they had like a functional delegate team that did, 1 week they'd be working on marketing events, and then finance, then legal. There was no sort of synergy in terms of building up those relationships. So I came in to help them set up that, grew a team of me plus our biggest. It was 4 reporting into me, running basically every single person who attended the lawyer events was invited by our team. We did all the awards.
Is this globally or just in the UK?
Our events were just mostly in the UK. We did one event in Spain, which is where I met Scott. And that had a bit of a European general counsel focus, but the majority, I'd say, would be in the UK and Europe. So we had a European awards as well. The UK awards was for, I think it's about 1,200 lawyers joined the Lawyer Awards in June every year at the Grosvenor. So yeah, a mixture of webinars, roundtables, bespoke dinners for clients, proper conferences, awards, things like that.
Fantastic. So you are literally, by default, over a period of time, you're networking, integrating, building relationships and your own community with some of the biggest legal heads and general counsels, in-house legal counsels in the country and potentially in Europe.
Yeah.
And
in order to stay ahead of the game in conferences, it's very busy out there. And, you know, general counsel are very busy individuals. They're not going to take a cold call. They're not going to reply to your email. It's very similar to, you know, trying to get that client on the phone as if you're a recruiter, is what I've realized since joining Harriet Brown. But relationships matter. Being able to call up a general counsel at BT and be like, yo, Russell, want to come to this conference? It's going to be super awesome. Just makes a world of difference. And so I essentially did that for 12 years. And I built up my network from LinkedIn, joined LinkedIn on the 7th of September 2010. And that's how much of a geek I am. I remember it was my first day at IQPC. And yeah, connect with general counsel, send them a message, managed to monetize it within the team at one point. Used to charge £100 an hour for people to use my LinkedIn to send messages for their accounts.
Shut up, did you?
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, got a couple of
You have
law
an
firms.
entrepreneurial streak there, Emma, huh?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, that's sort of the background is very traditional, sort of helping general counsel and their teams, in-house lawyers, some private practice lawyers as well when I was at the lawyer, so managing partners, dinners and stuff like that, but helping them, you know, build their professional brands, helping them build their networks and making sure that it was in an environment that wasn't going to attack them in a sales type way, and, you know, that had thought and attention into what you did and why you were bringing them there. And that was always really important to me.
Because it must be competitive as well. It must be fairly competitive. And these people, to give you their time, they've got to be something tangible. There's got to be value there for them, or they have to really like you and know that they trust you with their time.
Yeah,
So,
I was fortunate at the lawyer. It's, you know, established brand, a really solid team. We had an exceptional marketing manager. We had an exceptional operations manager who found the best venues and made the user experience really, really seamless. I would say that she's still there. The best conference producer I've ever worked with in my career is at the lawyer. She will research with so many people, and people like, you know, they like and respect her too. So they will also give her the time. So the content is really, really good. And that's really important, I think, in conferences. A lot of people will just wang out a conference and be like, oh, cool, let's talk about AI and legal. It's like, that's not enough. You've got to find what the real pain point is.
And so what's your role at this point? So we'll take up to the Spain conference. What's your role at that point?
My official title, I think, was something along the lines of head of delegate acquisition and awards.
And what's your trajectory from there? If you were to stay in that industry, where do you go from there?
Nowhere. If I wanted to stay working with general counsels, I hit a ceiling. With regards to events, the only other place to move in events is you go from delegates. The traditional career path is you go in, you get to know the delegates, you know, get to know the event, you get to know your market, and then you move up to sponsorship, and then you start selling the big sponsorship deals. So I would then, and I did do it, I did a sabbatical for 9 months, and I didn't particularly like it. It was the highest biller on the Global IP Exchange, but I didn't like it. So calling up sponsors, law firms, tech companies, recruiters, and saying, hey, fancy being in a room with 100 of these guys. But obviously a bit more thought and attention.
Yeah.
And then from there, traditionally, a conference, you would then become a sales director, then a divisional sales director, then potentially an MD, establishing new products. But I didn't have any interest in that side of the market. I wanted to stay with my general counsels because I'm a geek and I find them interesting.
Yeah. So then this is interesting. So you're doing fantastically well. You hit a glass ceiling. The trajectory isn't where you want to go. So talk through how you then met with Scott, the founder of Harriet Brown. What happened there?
So Scott was a sponsor of ours at the General Counsel Strategy Summit.
So how long had you known each other?
Oh, I think this was, I've been there 2.5 years. I think this was 6 or 7 years ago. Kind of lost track. So the first time I met him, he was a sponsor at the event. He sort of introduced himself, and I sort of went, mate, I'm staff. Like, go and talk to the people, like, useful people that way. And I'm like running around trying to make everything, you know, happy and for all the General Counsel delegates that I had invited, but also wanting to make sure the sponsors got value for money. It's an expensive sponsorship, right? And the way he tells it, it was like, after that, you then went around the room and all the people I wanted to talk to were hugging you. And I was like, oh, take me with you. So I met him, didn't really interact with him. It wasn't until COVID that I interacted with the sponsors a lot more. We had an exceptional, like, we ran quality events. So we had a really good rebook strategy. So when COVID happened in March, we did what everybody else did. We went, it's all going to be over by Q4. Life's going to be fine. We just moved this conference from Spain in May, to the UK at the end of September, because it's all going to be fine by the end of September. Obviously not. So we had to call all of the sponsors. And to be honest, you know, we didn't have a massive confidence in the sponsorship team being able to convey everything that we would be able to do from an additional perks perspective to counteract that sort of change in venue and the change of circumstances. So we decided that we would have either operations, production, or me delegates join them in order to do those calls. And actually it was me and the production head of production who did the call with Scott when we had to break the news. You know, you gave us all that money and it was going to be really nice, and we were going to go to Spain, you get to meet people in person, there's going to be sit-down dinners and by the pool and, you know, ocean view. So yeah, it's going to be on a digital platform. But we'd
I'm
really...
not giving you any money back, by the way.
But we'd really love to keep your money, please. So we came up with a whole strategy, you know, additional content. So he was a networking sponsor. We gave him 2 virtual roundtables. We, you know, did content on the online magazine, all of these different things. And our job was very stressful at that time when you run events and you can't physically meet people. Yeah. And, you know, we were told weekly, obviously, events jobs are at risk. It's like, no shit, Sherlock. The world is imploding.
Yeah, and we're affected more than most. Yeah.
But we made it work. I'm quite proud of the way that COVID, I'm very proud of the way that my team and my colleagues' teams actually made that work. I sort of brought everybody together at the beginning and I said, listen, guys, at the end of this, we're going to be legends or losers, right? And I'm telling you right now, everyone in this room is a fucking legend. I love that. And we're going to fucking do it. And little things along the way. And you know, it was small, but that first Christmas, you know, I sent everybody in the events team a Lint advent calendar. You know, after the first virtual event was a success, I sent everybody a bottle of Prosecco. Apart from the non-drinkers, I sent like bubble bath or chocolates or something. You know, I really wanted to say thank you. And we put in so much care and attention, and we managed to retain Scott's business, which was great. I think he actually did 2 virtual events with us, so that was a pretty good story. But coming out of that, he had actually had bigger plans. He wanted to do his own event. He wanted to do something really fun and do the charity General Counsel Burns Night. And he's had no experience in doing events. I mean, obviously he'd attended events, but he hadn't put on an event by his wedding.
That's a big one to start as well.
Yeah, just fill
Who's
a room.
Scott thinking, Scott? Go. Yeah.
Just 120 general counsels, like, just be fine. And a mutual connection, so the general counsel at the time of Royal London Insurance, a lovely chap called Fergus, told Scott, have you called Emma Bauer? And he went, no. And so he sent me this ominous message, and I was kind of a bit like, oh, I wonder if he's going to ask me if I want to be a recruiter. He was like, oh, Fergus says I need to talk to you about something. Can I call you? And he was really, like, quite sceptical. I could tell, like, why am I...
This is 2021, right?
So this would be, 2021. And he was very sceptical, like, why, like, you're obviously a middle-class English lass, like, what do you know about Burns? Not knowing that my father is, my whole family is Scottish. It's an argument we have. I call myself Scottish. Scott calls me very, very English. But my dad's actually a Burns Night speaker, so, and obviously I'm used to inviting people. And I thought, this sounds so much fun. It's been a really crappy couple of years. All of the conferences and stuff have all gone online, and they've all been so like educational and like legal updates. There's been none of that fun element of the dinner at the end or the drinks or the lunch or whatever it might be.
Which is ultimately what you want. The information is really important, but you've got to enjoy it, right?
The networking is so important. And I was like, dude, this sounds aces. Can I invite people to it? This is when I hope my old employer isn't listening. And we'd had a really, really chaotic end of the year, and December was always slack time in events land. And I just went on my LinkedIn and went through all of my as many general counsel connections as I could, and went, wishing you a Merry Christmas. Thank you for sticking with us during these horrendous times. P.S. Have you heard about the general counsel events night that Harry Brown are doing? And next thing I knew, I was sort of like he'd text me being like, what do you think about the toasts? I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And we started chatting. And then he
sounding board starts off with the sounding board.
Indeed. And then I think he realised, he actually sent me a message being like, yeah, I really thought that event in Spain, you just sort of picked 100 general counsels, went, want to come to Spain? It's really, really cool. And they all went, absolutely. Like, I'm trying to give away free stuff, like cool free stuff. And people are saying no, or they're saying yes, and then they're cancelling. And I'm like, yeah, events are stressful. It's awful. You never know what's going to happen. And yeah, around the same time, he had launched his podcast, Lessons I Learnt in Law. And one of his guests was a head of community at a legal tech company. And so one day we were chatting about his Burns night, and I'd had a couple of glasses of wine, and I think he paid me some kind of a compliment. And I went, oh, thanks, dude. Can you believe that PwC passed on me today? And I'd been to an interview with PwC. I don't know why. It's not my jam. Way too corporate. I'm pretty sure they would not appreciate the amount of times I say fuck on a daily basis. But I'd done it, and, I was a bit like, oh, I don't know what to do with my life, blah, blah, blah. And he went, wait, if you're leaving the lawyer, like, come and work for me. And I was like, do I want to be a recruiter? Like, that's a completely different, it's selling to the same people, but it's a different career. Is that what I want? I'm like, oh, I don't really know, mate. He went, no, come and be my head of community. I'm like, you what now?
Yeah, trailblazing. It's like, wow, what is it? Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Especially in 2021. It was,
Yeah, exactly. So he went, come and meet me for lunch. We'll work it out together. So I met him for lunch, and he asked me 3 questions. Got out his notebook, three columns. What do you love about your job that you want to continue doing in your next career move? What do you want to ditch? What do you not enjoy about what you currently do in your job? And what are your interests or passions that you think would fit in nicely with what it is that you do, but you're not given the freedom to learn or develop because it's outside of your wheelhouse or stepping on somebody else's toes?
Love that.
And he wrote it all down, and then he went, and how much do you want to be paid? And I went, oh, crap, what do I say to that? And I was like, and he was like, okay, cool. Presume you want a bonus? And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? Literally, like, walked back to my office being like, I don't know what's going on here. And next thing I knew, signed on the dotted line. And that was it.
Do you know, it's brilliant. And what I love about that is 2 things. Well, a number of things, but the 2 key things that jump out at me. Number one, back in 2021, I mean, we had COVID, and there's always been recruitment marketers and whatnot, but it changed in COVID in my mind, and it became very much about brand building and personal brand building. There was a massive uprise in the importance of recruitment marketing and building personal brand. But that community aspect, there were certain people doing it, maybe the larger organisations who had the budget, but the smaller businesses weren't typically involved. So that was really brave of Scott. But secondly, for you, you're coming into a role that is not clearly defined, and people aren't used to it. People aren't being used to being contacted by a recruitment head of community. What is this? Even though they are part of a community de facto or by default anyway, it's not been badged up as such. So I find it really impressive that you both had the foresight, I suppose, to come in, understand your strengths and weaknesses and try and make something work. But it can't have been all plain sailing, surely.
No. I think the first thing I did when I landed was, first of all, I went to the Recruitment Network and watched the how do you do recruitment videos that were like 7 hour long. And I was like, oh, this is what you guys do. Okay, that's useful to know. And second of all, I reached out to all of those old contacts, the marketing people in LexisNexis and Legal Tech who had been sponsors previously, and went, I don't have a marketing manager. I think I am the marketing manager now. I don't really know. Like,
So
will you
who's
be
doing
my friend?
marketing? What's Harriet Brown's situation at the time? Who's doing marketing there? What's the situation?
We outsourced to an agency
Yeah.
who did, basic social media, and I then launched with them a monthly newsletter. But yeah, it was
very
all,
basic at the time.
yeah, quite a limited support. They were really good and really friendly, but they had a variety of different clients, and they brought in a lot of really good ideas, and actually they helped teach me a lot about marketing. But I thought, first thing I need to do is practice what I preach. I have been banging general counsel's heads together and saying, you need to talk to him because you two are going to get on, or you've both got this in common, or this is going to help you, and I need to do the same. So I built my community of community people, right? And community is a mixture of marketing and PR. It is a mixture of BD in some instances. I don't personally BD. We've got Chinese wall. I do not sell. There's nothing of that.
But that's excellent. I'm just trying to think about how do you monetize that value quickly? It's very difficult because you've got to build a community, you've got to get people bought into that idea, you've got to show value. So you've got Scott who's brought you in and a salary that you didn't expect and a bonus and whatnot, which you've got to achieve certain targets. How did you work that? What was the targets? What were you targeting on achieving? Did you get that far?
That was the biggest issue. And I think coming from a sales background and being able to be like, you want 100 GCs at that event and you want 1,000 lawyers at this event, I give you that, tick, 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 bonus time, happy as Larry. And we didn't have that. We just needed, what he gave me was the freedom. And I went to him, I was like, mate, I am not going to do anything. I'm not going to action anything the first 6 months. First 6 months, my mission is to be absolutely exhausted because I've had so many Zoom calls with GCs doing research that like literally I have to say to my husband, sorry, dude, I'm not talking to anybody else today. So like, that's me done. I'm chatted out. And I did. And I was fortunate, I orchestrated the way I left my old business as well. So we had the first in-person GC summit, the first ones out of COVID. I was like, I can't abandon that team. That would make me a loser in that situation.
I love that.
So I had a month notice period. I went, I'll double that. They asked for 3. I went, no, I'll give you 2. So I gave them an extra month. And it just so happened that GC event was at the end of those 2 months. And I said, I'll give you the extra month if you let me go, you let me run the event. And, I'll also throw in, I'll make him sponsor it.
Win-win.
Yeah, everybody wins. And so I went. So it was great. Like literally, I caught up with somebody who was at the conference. We had a gin and tonic last night at the bar at work. And he was like, oh my God, I've not seen you since the Emma Bauer Leaving Summit of 2022.
The Emma Bauer Leaving Summit.
Like it was crazy. And it was so sweet. And like the editor of The Lawyer like said goodbye to me. Like, oh my God, it was such an emotional thing. I was there for 7 years. Yeah. So 5 years at IQPC, 7 years at The Lawyer. And then going into this abyss of unknown with how do I set myself targets? What does good look like? But what Scott was really good at was saying, we don't really know. So yes, let me give you that freedom. So I worked on my own network, as I said, build out your own network of people who have information or can do things. There is no point staring at a blank piece of paper and trying to figure it out when you can call somebody and they can show you, like you mentioned earlier, they can show you it in half an hour over Zoom, right? So build that out and then speak to as many of your target clients as possible. What is there already? What do you like? What do you not like? What do you want that's not there? And if in an ideal world, if I could be like, money is no object, time is no object, what do you need from me in terms of community and network and events and bringing people together?
So this is really interesting. So you're adding value or without relating that necessarily to bringing it back to recruitment. So you're building that trust, building that confidence, developing and maintaining those relationships. So you're really getting trust and buy-in from people because you're adding constant value and you're not yet worrying about the recruitment aspect of it.
Not at the beginning, not at all. And I still don't to this day. I think think of it like this. This is the way I described it to my husband because he didn't get it. Took him 9 months to understand because he kept being like, so you're doing marketing now? I was like, oh, kind of. He's like, I don't get what you do. And I'm like, I'm kind of figuring it out still. And he's like, okay, that makes sense. You know, it's just a small business of 7 people and they're giving you this money and you've got no sales targets and I don't understand your job. But okay, darling, if you say that this is fine. But the way I described it to him was slowly, catchy monkey marketing, right? I'm not selling. I don't need to come to Scott and be like, oh, I've passed 10 general counsel leads into the sales guys this month, because that's not going to bring any value. And it's also not going to be authentic in what I'm doing. The reason why people, I would hope, and you know, I actually am a bit of a tart on LinkedIn and I do ask for referrals and recommendations. And when I'm having a shit day, I go and read them and they make me smile. But what they say about me is, I genuinely do care. I'm not doing it so it's like, oh, give me a job at the end of it. They know that I'm going to do nice things for them. They're very intelligent people. They're the most senior lawyers in these organizations. And I'm not talking about little tiny companies here at all. I mean, some of them are, and they're sole counsel.
Because the difference with in-house counsel, you're talking, these are the in-house senior lawyers for some of the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
That's who you're talking about. You're not talking about small practice lawyers or barristers. You're talking in-house general counsels.
No, yeah, none of the suits and the, you know, you're in a big law firm and, you know, everyone thinks you're a god. Like, everyone's like, oh, legal. Oh, the Department of No. You're a cost center. Well, we got to make cuts. Oh, why aren't you letting me do this? Oh, why won't you let, you know, me sign this $1 billion deal just because the client wants to pay us 50p every other Tuesday for, you know, 1 billion years? And you have to have these conversations with your commercial guys in the business and advise them. So, yeah, people in my community, it ranges from people like BT, like, why can't I think of any other companies I know? Royal London, AXA, TikTok. You know, these are the people who we work with, but we also have a real dedicated community to the people who are on their own and they're the only lawyer in that organization. Because if it's lonely being in TikTok or BT's legal department, it's really lonely when you're just there on your own and nobody really gets you.
Everyone wants something, but not in a good way, and you're under pressure. So to have the relief of someone who's coming in and gets it and understands it, and is a breath of fresh air, but can be trusted, is unbelievable. And I suppose they're getting contacted by recruiters. Recruiters, give us your business, give us your business.
Yeah.
And this is really clever because you've got Emma, who's not after that. That's a byproduct of what you're doing really, really well, which is nurturing the relationship and being genuine.
And we did have to, you know, set the boundaries at the beginning, I think, as well, because Scott and I had made it up over lunch. So we had to educate the consultants. Like, at some point, they've all sort of come to me like, oh, can you get me a meeting with blah, blah, blah? No, bruv. Like, put your big boy pants on and go and book it yourself. You can use my name, but I'm not your PA. I'm not here to
make your money.
I'm not here to chase jobs, because then it damages my reputation. And the thing is as well, one of the biggest nerve-wracking things doing this for me was that it was so important. I wouldn't have done this in any other recruitment business, right? It wasn't that he was a recruiter. I came to join Heriot Brown because of Scott, and I trusted him, and I'd met some of his other consultants at these events, and they were, as I used to describe to general counsel before I joined, the least wankiest recruiters I've ever had on site at any of my events. They don't talk about recruitment, they build good relationships, they're quite good fun, and they act like normal people, unlike a lot of the other ones. And that's really important.
Yeah, it is. And do you know, again, I love that. And I know Scott well enough, and that's exactly the type of organisation he wants to build and has built and is continuing to build. But there's another aspect here, where you're building all this in recruitment, and this is where so many founders that I talk to, they're so paranoid and risk averse and nervous about bringing in a non-billing hire, especially at senior level. And I often say, you know, often it's the founder being a bottleneck, not thinking blue sky. They can't think strategically because they're trying to do everything, sales, delivery, and whatnot. But they're investing all their money bringing in big billers because they see the immediate return.
Yeah.
They can't think long-term and strategically enough to spend X amount of money on a salary that's not going to offer an immediate return, or how they can't see how it's going to offer a return.
And it's really, really difficult.
It's very difficult. I'm not criticising it. I can get it because I've been there, and I would have been the same.
Yeah.
And this is why I was so impressed with Scott when he told me his story and about you and James and whatnot. But then again, it's a patience thing, because you're still not monetizing, and you can't just magic an event up, get 100 people there that are going to use Heriot Brown, and then you've got to get roles, and this takes time.
It does take time.
So you're there 6 months, 8 months, what?
So yeah, it was. So I started in May 2022. So it's been 2.5 years. So the first 6 months I did that research. We did a party. We did a massive survey. We spoke to the community. We were like, what is it that you want? And then went straight into planning the second Burns night, which obviously now I look after with Scott's help.
That was last week, wasn't it? Was it last week?
Oh no, that was our rebrand party.
Oh, right, okay.
That was James's bright idea, actually. It was a really good idea, but yeah, I planned a party for 100 lawyers in 2.5 weeks, including creating a whole new marketing with the new brand, website, all the communications.
Fantastic.
It was a little bit stressful. No, Burns is in January.
Right.
Around it's the 25th, but we always have it in the week because it's a Saturday next year. What was
So we're talking about the timescales and the lead.
Oh yeah, the timescales. So yeah, then Burns is quite a big thing, and like planning that. And then last year, I think I'd had all of these ideas, but I was still very reluctant. I'd been working in such a controlled environment. Everything needed ROI. Everything needed why do you want to do that? What value is it going to bring to us? And I was still quite timid in the way that I would be like, oh, do you think this is a good idea? And he's like, yeah, dude, just go with it. And the real game changer for me was I was going to my first proper conference as a delegate. And when you've been...
How long is this in?
So this was March 2023.
So how long had you been working for?
Just under a year.
A year, okay. So that's what I mean, it's a long time, it's a year. A year of him trusting and you trusting him that this is going to go and get you where you need to be. It's brilliant.
So I think, in the first couple of months, there were things that sort of really did boost my morale in terms of we were approached by a massive airline to pitch in their RFP because I knew one of their most senior lawyers. And we didn't get on the panel, but Scott was like, bang it. We were approached by a massive FMCG to do some interim roles. Unfortunately, at the time, we didn't have a really good quality interim offering. So, but no harm, no foul, right? So there were sort of things that were ticking along, and you could see, the people I was inviting to that Burns, it was the kind of clients that people wanted to be working for, but we didn't really have any process. And I think the game changer was going to this conference because I realized I had spent 12 years being the lovely lady behind the registration desk. I know in-house lawyers way too well. I really genuinely think if I got all of that information out of my brain, I could speak 5 languages. It's a joke. So people will come up to registration. I've already got your name badge. I'm like, hey, Paul, how's it going? Here's your customized agenda. Give me a bell if you need anything. And I was going to a conference as a delegate. Obviously, when you run the show, you can't go to that show because they're you're the competition. And I'm like, what have I been doing to these poor lawyers for the last 12 years? How do you do this? And I had this horrendous flashback of the first day of university and walking up to one of my best friends and being like, hi, I'm Emma and I'm reading history. Are you reading history? Should we be her friends reading history? Oh my gosh, this is so cringy. How do you talk to people when you're not the hostess with them?
When you're not, yeah.
Yes. I'm they're not my puppets anymore.
You have no voice of authority. You're not in control. You're just on the other side.
And it's really hard as an event organizer when you see another person's events and all of their name badges are out of line and you just really want to jump. There's sort of things about organizing events. And I went, this is probably a really rubbish idea. But why don't I do a WhatsApp channel, right? Do a WhatsApp channel, I contact all the speakers. I do a LinkedIn poll. I do an email blast to women in my network and on the CRM. I very kindly, actually, the event organizer was American and didn't fully understand GDPR. So they actually had a matched job title and company name, delegate list, which I copy and pasted into Excel before politely, professional courtesy, explaining GDPR to my contact at the event. And got rid of all the, private practice, recruiters, blah, 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 blah. I just went, right, general counsel at Totally Money. All right, Sharon, sent Sharon a text. Hey, Sharon, this is probably a shit idea. Thought it'd be quite nice, to dodge all the e-discovery salesmen at this conference and, any partners who are going to try to sell you our services. We'll have a little tight-knit community of in-house lawyers at Whipple, because that was the event. It's called Women in Influence and something. We call it Whipple. And everyone went, that's a cracking idea, mate. And literally, there was never a moment I was at this event where I wasn't surrounded by people and nobody felt alone. Literally, people would text and be like, oh, I'm by the cake.
That's such a good idea because no matter what network, and even if there's 8 people in a room, you always feel like you're standing like a little schoolboy in the corner, a little schoolgirl in the corner, not knowing what to say, and you can't say this person wants something and they're not of interest. What do you do and how do you? So at least you've created a community where you've got general interest, you've got common interest. Yeah. You're similar in terms of what you're there for.
Exactly. And I went into that conference with 50 to 60 general counsel who were attending it in the WhatsApp, and, you know, not to be gender specific, but, you know, us ladies can chat, and we just continued chatting. And now the in-house women in law community has, I think, 375 members. There's now 17 channels that we run.
Wow.
And the membership is now just about to hit 800.
So how do you, again, linking that back in then, how does that link back into an ROI for Harriet Brown? How does that translate to return?
People love it because people want to know they're not alone, and they want a safe place where they can ask the stupid question, the silly question. Oh, this is probably a bad idea. And that WhatsApp gives them the opportunity. And so just naturally, all of a sudden, people start coming to your events, they start joining the WhatsApp community, they start engaging with you on your LinkedIn, they realize that you are offering them that voice. And then every now and again, somebody texts me like, I don't suppose you have an interim offering, because we need like 2 senior, like I need a mat cover. Hey, this is Lucy Taylor. She's our head of interim and she's fantastic. Or, you know, the other day, what was it? I invited somebody to a conference and she went to our launch party. And she went, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't make it. I don't suppose actually you might be interested in doing a couple of roles for us. And I'm like, I don't do anything sensible like the recruitment. But have you met Zoe? Zoe's great. She's our TMT consultant.
Love it.
And it's just a natural thing.
And that's the key thing here. And this is, and I didn't know that, because it's not the type of conversation you get into with someone. How are you making money out of that? Mm. But I knew that had to be working because you're so highly regarded and you're kind of everywhere and from that marketing and that community side. And what comes across and what's most impressive about it is that strategic long-term thinking. Because what you're doing all the way through, even though you're not showing an immediate ROI, you're building something from day one that is going to work. And there's value all through the chain. Because even if you're still not getting that, the brand and the way you're doing that, and Harriet Brown, and you're transforming that brand from a small in-house legal practice, they're everywhere. In that industry, everybody knows who you are now. And so it's really, really impressive. And it was just, I speak to so many founders who wouldn't have had the foresight or the courage to be able to do it. But more than that, stick with you and believe in what you're going to achieve in it. Yeah. And now, I mean, Scott was telling me that he was there the other day and he got a phone call from a CEO of a massive organisation, I won't say who it is, that you really knew their general counsel and they want to talk to him about roles. And, you know, it's, I don't know if you even know that, but
it's a sickness now. Like literally, I can't walk into Tesco without being like, oh, I should probably send blah, blah, blah. And I say, oh, you know.
But you love it.
Our phone bill comes and I'm like, I wonder how blah, blah, blah it is. Like, genuinely, I see lawyers everywhere. And I do. I am the ultimate in-house legal geek. And I think that they're very, very interesting. It's a very, very interesting career. Part of me wishes, you know, that maybe I had tried harder and at school and done it myself. But it's the way that people message me and they say, like, thank you so much for this. Or like the guy I had a drink with this week, he was like, my GC is moving. I'm the head of legal. I'm ready. I'm going to put my hat in the ring. And I'm like, all right, mate. So I'm going to introduce you to Dan, Jenny, Ferg. You're going to have conversations. Now, Dan did this 3 years ago, right? I've got them into WhatsApp. We're talking about karaoke songs in there, and they're going to have a conversation tomorrow. And, so you know, good. I just feel like it's not all about the actual product you have, whatever that is in this instance. And in our world, that's recruitment now. But I think that recruitment, at the end of the day, what I've learned in my 2.5 years, is it's all about relationships and it's all about brand. And so all I'm doing is I'm like the sidekick to the business.
Especially now, because there's a big talk around AI, right? And what AI will not do is build a community for you.
No.
And so there's a massive drive around building these communities, being the go-to expert and have that community. And a lot of the massive brands out there can't really capitalize. They can't shift quick enough to do it. And that will change, because you're going to have, you might have a big brand who's worked with these GCs before, but they're not in the day-to-day interaction talking about their kids and talking about karaoke and talking about the...
We have a parents club with 150 lawyers who are also parents. And that one...
And what are they going to become? They're going to become GCs, or they're going to become whatever. So long-term play, people, I believe, who have that really strong community, the experts in their field, can back it up with delivery, but also have that community are the ones that will utilise technology to improve what they're doing and create more touch points with clients and candidates to increase value and just leverage technology to improve what they're doing, as opposed to competing with it or relying on it.
James and I were talking about this the other day. Like, you got to think about it like a spider's web, right? What the community and the brand and the marketing and the business development and all of this does is your recruitment consultant is that spider in the middle of the web. What I'm trying to do is make that web as big as possible for them and to support them into doing things themselves when it comes to their own personal brand, but also just strengthening that relationship. I don't need to sell to these people. I'm just creating those touch points, building that trust in order that they eventually go, oh, do you want to give this a go? And you know what the best thing is? Like, it's pissing off all of our competitors, and it's really fun. But also it is starting to work. Like, we are now able, with the help of James coming into the business, we've created actual processes, right? So where we can sort of track where this web has built from.
James the MD.
Yes, James RMD. So now we can actually showcase what the spider's web is. So it is part of, that consultant reaching out or doing, a proper recruitment in sending a spec or calling them up or taking them for a cup of coffee. But then you have the addedness of the WhatsApp, or they attended this event and they attended that event. And he's helping us basically frame this spider's web so that spider, the consultant, is just strengthening that approach.
That data is all there. You understand everything. So much information that can be used is brilliant.
A lot of data. And I think the one piece of advice I would give to any of your listeners right now, if they're interested in something like this, is don't...
Tell the camera. Talk to the camera.
No, I don't do it. I don't do to the camera. There are too many communities that are mailing lists. They're marketing mailing lists. And it's completely obvious what you're doing. If you want to do this well, really make sure you hire the right person, and you really need to think about who that is and their relationships. And they don't need to come from recruitment at all, as I have shown, but it's really important that you find that right fit and not be afraid to give things well. Like my phrase is, and I say this all the time in some of my marketing communities, I'm like, I just got the spaghetti out the pan and I threw it against the wall and I thought, that stuck. That's going to cost 10 grand. Let's just unstick that one for now, or whatever it might be. And just not be afraid to give things a go. Fail fast, fail forward. As long as it's not going to be massively expensive, what's the worst that you can lose? But if you invest in something like this now, you can still be ahead of the game as long as you don't make it purely we're doing a breakfast roundtable for general counsels in retail, and we're going to talk about, challenges in AI. And then at the end, I'm going to be like, give me your jobs. It's just really obvious. That's not a community, it's
Everyone's
marketing.
doing that, but a lot of people are doing that. There's no relationship being built. People turn up for a free breakfast or a free lunch to tick a box, and then they're off. There's no tangible relationship being built. I think the other thing, what you said there, is look at this as a long-term strategic play. Give it time. Look at it as a long-term investment, not just a quick win, because I think that's really key to why you've been successful. So what's the future for Emma and Harriet Brown?
Right. So, well, we've recently rebranded, and part of that is rebranding our community. So we've called it The Lodge. Our founder, Scott Brown, is Scottish, so his idea was a bothy, which obviously as a Scottish lass myself.
Explain what a bothy is.
A bothy is basically a lodge. I was like, dude, no.
Should have known that, Paul. Sorry.
No one's going to know what that is. So we went with the lodge. A lodge is bothies are basically these lodges out in the Highlands, and they create a safe space, community, warm place. If you're hiking, you can go in, they're free, you can warm up, you can get dry. It's a community, right? Sort of place that you can have. So we're calling it The Lodge. We've got regular webinars. I think, process is finally coming into play, year 3. I've literally just said this morning, we're going to do our Lessons from the Lodge webinars on the 4th Wednesday of every month.
Fantastic.
We're going to have that planned. We've got obviously the Burn Supper. We're working on some really interesting professional branding opportunities with lawyers. And I think, what's really important is now sort of stepping away from that sort of setting up. And as Scott says, like backing away from admin Emma and allowing creative Emma to come out.
Phenomenal.
And so,
God, if creative Emma's not here already, what can you do? Wow, that's blown my mind. Admin Emma's still there, is she?
oh yeah, love an Excel.
Right, this has been phenomenal. I'm going to ask you, I always finish off with a question, right? And it can be commercial, it can be corporate, it can be personal, whatever. What's the one thing you wish you'd known sooner?
No one's going to die if only one person turns up to your roundtable or your in-house legal yoga class or your webinar only gets 20 registrations. If it's not going to cost the world in terms of finance and your time and you think it could be a good idea, give it a whirl. We're not brain surgeons. Everything's going to be okay. And I think that's what held me back at the beginning quite a lot. As I said, I was quite skeptical of being like, do you think we could do this? And, oh, should I do that? Whereas now I'm like, I'm going to do this. We're going to see what happens.
That's what's happening.
Chuck the spaghetti against the wall, keep it going, and let's see what goes. So I think, no one's going to die in marketing, PR, comms. I mean, unless maybe your idea is a community skydive or something. I think I'll probably stay away from that. Yeah. But that would be
I love that. That's brilliant. And we've mentioned James a few times in this. James is the MD of Harriet Brown. We're going to be having him on as well. And
awesome.
As a follow-up to this. And I think in the future, I'd love to get you guys on together, maybe 12, 18 months' time, just to see how Harriet Brown's evolved and what you guys are up to in that at that point, if that's okay.
We're a good double act.
I think you do. I think Scott has got a really, really great team on his hands and the ability to keep going and growing. It's been phenomenal, Emma.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. And I really think there's so much value people can get from this episode. And we will definitely see you again soon. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the show. I really hope you enjoyed it. First and foremost, we always try to add value to our audience, be it a founder looking to scale or a leader looking to progress up the chain in the agency world. And if we can do this in a way that is easy to watch and entertaining, then for me, that is job done. Once again, thanks for listening, and until next time.